can't believe that I'm saying this, but we are now entering the 5th year of Apple Silicon being on sale. I don't really know how that happened, but here we are. We're now on the 4th generation of chips, and every single Mac has been redesigned or retrofitted in the case of the Mac Pro. And for Apple, that means they now have to change their focus. Up until this point, these last 4 generations have been targeted at Intel customers, tempting them to upgrade with a whole range of new features and performance. But now, going into the 5th year, Apple has a new challenge. They need to appeal to existing Apple Silicon customers. And so I ask you this: if you're watching this video right now and you own an Apple Silicon Mac, anything from the new M3 Ultra to the original M1 MacBook Air, what would it take for you to upgrade? Let me know in the comments below what your criteria are, but to get a bit more of a broad strokes answer, I posted some polls on Twitter and YouTube. On Twitter, I asked if you already have an Apple Silicon MacBook Pro, are you planning on upgrading? And I was surprised to find that 51% said definitely not, with only 13% saying definitely. But with 36% of responses saying maybe, I decided to get a little bit more specific, so I posted another poll here on YouTube. And this poll left no room for on the fencers. If you have an Apple Silicon MacBook Pro, would you buy a redesigned one next year? With a whopping 75% of responses either leaning or definitely no. To me, that was frankly a surprising result, and it begs the question, are these Apple Silicon MacBooks simply too good for their own good? Let's dive into it with some context right after a word from today's video sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Delete Me, the hands-free subscription service that will remove your personal information that's being sold online. In today's tech climate, you are the product, and your data can easily fall into unscrupulous hands. That's why Delete Me searches for your information held by hundreds of data brokers all year long. And in just 7 days, they generate a privacy report that shows where your info, like phone numbers, addresses, and email addresses, are held. They then regularly work on your behalf to remove information from those brokers. Since I've been trying out Delete Me, I have been shocked at just how many websites my information has shown up on. And I love their proactive approach, informing me of new finds even after the initial report. Because Delete Me is constantly updating their list of sites and brokers, and they monitor sites from which your data is removed to make sure it doesn't get repopulated. And it's those personal touches that make Delete Me the best to work with for data removal. Right now, you can get 20% off consumer plans. Just go to joindeleteme.com/LukeMiani and enter code Luke. Big thanks to Delete Me for sponsoring. Let's get back to the video. Now, the first thing that we need to establish is how long people typically keep a laptop for. And if you search on Google for a bit, you'll find most people say that it's around 3 to 8 years. And that's a pretty large range, and a range that Apple Silicon machines are starting to fall into. But even the oldest Apple Silicon devices, like this 2020 M1 MacBook Air, don't really feel like they're at the end of their lifespan. I paid less than $400 for this M1 MacBook Air, and it does absolutely everything that you would need a laptop to do without any issues. And in fact, it is so powerful that there are only a handful of Intel MacBooks ever produced that can outperform this thing. So if I'm the average MacBook customer who just wants a computer that will work and get good battery life, I don't really see any reason to upgrade from this device. And to be honest, speaking as a content creator for a second, that has limited some of the content that I'm able to make. Back before Apple Silicon existed, I had a ton of videos about basically finding ways to save a bit of money, buying an older machine, fixing it up, upgrading it, what have you, to make it more usable. But now, just buy an M1 MacBook Air. That's basically all there is to say. And you better believe if this is something affecting my content, it's gonna be affecting Apple. There's absolutely zero chance that they are not sitting over in Cupertino thinking, how can we sell some MacBooks to people who bought ones that are just frankly perfect? And the data supports this conclusion. If we take a look at Mac revenue over the years, you can see in 2021, and then especially in 2022, there's a massive spike. And it's not hard to see what happened. Q1 of 2021 was the first full quarter where the M1 generation was on sale, and in Q1 of 2022, the MacBook Pro with the M1 Pro and Max were out. So unsurprisingly, 2023 and 4 were lower thanks to just mainly chip upgrades. Now in 2025, Q1, we've seen sales increasing yet again, and frankly, I think that's easily explained by the new Mac Mini, the new M4 MacBook Pros, which had very significant chip performance improvements. Pretty much every single Mac has been refreshed with a pretty decent spec bump. However, I'm still noticing that most of the people that I talk to that are actually purchasing these new devices in 2025 are still holdouts from the Intel generation. I have 3 friends right now who are looking at buying MacBook Airs. All of them are coming from Intel machines. But as rumors are now swirling about a redesigned MacBook Pro coming out next year, we have to step back and look at the reality. And from what I've seen as a creator and someone who is, let's be honest, the technology advocate for most friends and family, people are kind of falling into 2 buckets right now. You're either somebody who has an ancient MacBook Pro from like pre-2016 and you're just ride or die until that thing goes into the earth and then probably will buy a used MacBook Air. Or 2, you have one of the newer Apple Silicon machines and it is so outrageously good that you can't possibly imagine upgrading it. Take, for example, this 16-inch M1 Pro MacBook Pro. By the time the new generation of MacBook comes out at the end of next year, this is going to be a 5-year-old machine, which is right in the range of what Google will tell you is the average laptop lifespan. But as anyone in the comments will surely tell you, these devices at 3, 4, 5 years old don't really feel like they're at the end of their lifespan at all. You can now pick these things up for about $1,000, and for that you will get one of the best displays ever put on a laptop, period, in my opinion. You will get a fantastic package with the right mix of USB-C Thunderbolt ports and regular HDMI and SD card ports, fantastic battery, keyboard, speakers. It is frankly an unbeatable package. The #1 MacBook killer is no longer, oh, it feels old and slow and it's not getting software updates. It's, hey, my battery is completely toasted, or I cracked the screen and they're too expensive to repair, so I'll just buy a new one. And let me tell you, all of that is fantastic for the consumer, but it's not great for Tim Cook. He's probably not super thrilled about the fact that you can kind of just go out and buy literally the cheapest MacBook known to man, and just, that's it. You just use that forever. I mean, in my head, I still look at the M1 MacBook Air and I think, wow, the new MacBooks are really good. And then I realize this is 4.5 years old. What? It's honestly, it's golden handcuffs is what it is. And this is all very reminiscent of what happened to Apple with the iPad Pro. You look at the 2018 generation iPad Pro, that thing was so good that Apple couldn't really figure out how to improve on it. Even now with the M4 iPad Pro, I still think the 2018 is more than good enough to do basic iPad stuff, and that thing is now almost 7 years old. So if I'm Tim Cook right now, then I'm gonna be exploring 3 main options. The first one, and probably the least popular, is gonna be just cutting off support. No more Mac OS, no more Apple Intelligence features, no more special features in the next version of Mac OS for these older devices. That's probably not gonna go over super well, and historically isn't typically how Apple operates. The second is I'm looking at Q1 Mac sales for 2025 and I'm thinking, when I introduced a new generation of chips that was significantly more powerful at sometimes a lower price point and just worked on making the product a really good value, people wanted to buy it. And number 3 is product packaging. If the chips are all gonna be fantastic and more power than most people need, the laptop around it is gonna have to change. That's probably why we're seeing rumors of tandem OLED on the next generation MacBook Pro. And you don't have to look forward speculatively. Take a look at the M4 Mac Mini. That thing is a significantly more powerful computer than the old M2, but I think really what sold it for a lot of people is the new design. It has more practical use of Thunderbolt. It is tiny and adorable, and it's well priced. So when you combine all of these factors, really, us the consumer, we can't lose. Because on the one hand, we get the best computers ever made, and on the other hand, Apple has to make them even better to tempt us to upgrade. So, quite frankly, I think we're in a good position, but it's gonna be really interesting to see what Apple's next move is. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Did Apple get themselves into a bit of a pickle by making MacBooks too good? Or is this the challenge that they needed to keep sustaining those sales year over year? Let me know in the comments below. And of course, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.